to find somebody.
Okay.
The person comes in, tries to get an understanding of what's happening,
Okay.
and then you build it from there. You know, but the decision itself does not really surprise me. I always kind of felt that the end was approaching, the end was coming in.
Yeah.
You can talk about a number of things. You can look at the numbers perspective, and you could tell that it was just off. There was something really off about Man United and what they were doing. And the decline of Man United, if you ask me, under Erik ten Hag, started in February 2023, just after winning the League Cup. Now the games became more labored.
Yeah.
United struggled to win more games.
Yeah.
It almost felt as if the team had shut down for the season after winning the League Cup.
True.
Eventually, they made it through to the Champions League, where that was at the start of this season. The disaster took on new dimensions of horror because United played an entire Champions League group phase, won only one game, and even that game, they needed Andre Onana to save an injury time penalty to give them 3 points in that encounter. And things never got better, you know, throughout the season. That opening game against Wolves, 1-0, highlighted the problems with Man United, and the problems kept coming up and up and up and up, and you could tell there was something really wrong with the team structurally. Ten Hag blamed injuries. That was his excuse. He got a bit of a reprieve in the off-season when he won the FA Cup, and there was but the other people, the people that Ineos spoke to, turned down the job. So Thomas Tuchel, they had spoken at length, but they couldn't agree on the finances, and then he decided to look elsewhere. And then we've come to this season where things have not really improved, and after that 2-1 loss, Ten Hag has lost his job. I remember before the game, several watchers dubbed that game the El Sakiko, that whoever lost was going to be sacked, because for Julian Lopetegui, who fans have christened J-Lo, I don't even know where that name came from, but that's fine. You know, they felt that he was also teetering on the brink, you know, and it's Ten Hag who got pushed over the edge, and he's lost his job ultimately.
So Erik ten Hag has left United in 14th place on the table. It's 3 wins in 9 matches so far to begin the campaign. United have failed to score in quite a number of those games as well. Yeah, I don't know. Let's discuss your initial personal feelings when the news caught up with you that Ten Hag has finally been let go.
I was surprised. I was surprised by the timing. Because if you want to fire the manager, like Nathan said, you do it before the international break or do it during the off season. And this past off season, you had ample opportunity to do so, to sack him. But you dilly-dallied, and you didn't sack him. Rather, you guaranteed the 3rd year of his contract, and you added an extra year to 2026. And under 3 months into the season, you sack him, knowing very well that the results haven't been the best. Yes, true. But you look at the circumstances, you look at the games itself, and you wonder why they would make such a move. That's one. Especially when now there looks to be proper structure at Manchester United. Before the Ineos takeover, things were a bit chaotic at Manchester United. Things weren't streamlined. But ever since Ineos took over, things are becoming streamlined. That's why they are cutting off, quote-unquote, excesses. So, ambassadorial deal for Sir Alex Ferguson. At the end of the season, it is off.
In fact, not to even cut you, but somebody indicated that one of the reasons why Ineos had taken so long in pulling the plug on Ten Hag is that they were sort of getting cold feet about how much compensation money they had to pay.
It was always going to cost them a lot, about £15 million or so.
I've seen 17 million.
Some people have mentioned
some in that range.
And so for me, now that you have a proper structure and you've made some signings that represent what the manager is and wants, why don't you see it through at least the first year? Because Manchester United look to be still stuck in transition, because they still have players who are holdovers from the old regime, who reflect the old style of play on the counter-attack, very good on the counter-attack. But they have a new breed of players who reflect what the manager is all about. And so there's a clash of identity. And that's why Man United, when you look at it, in critical positions, they are built to play on the counter-attack. But they want to play like the manager wants, which is to dominate possession, play a very high line, create as many chances as possible. And on top of that, when you look at the situation, you need to look at the situational report. Coming on the back of a West Ham loss that had Man United create so many chances that you could clearly tell that it wasn't a structure problem, it wasn't a system problem, it was all down to the players. The players failed to deliver, and when you look at that particular game, that particular loss, the chances that were wasted, most of them fell at the feet of players who were there before Erik ten Hag. So how then do you go out there and sack the manager, knowing very well that this is more or less the first year of the project with Ten Hag under Ineos? You brought in proper structure, you made recruitment for the future. Why don't you allow the first season, even the first season, to complete? So that's wrong on their part. And secondly, if you wanted to sack him, why then do you guarantee his third year and add an extra year to his deal? It's something that is, I would say, it's neither here nor there kind of move, because you don't really know what you are about, but you are just acting in the spur of the moment.
Let me just say, just to contribute, right, that typically what I know is regular practice is that when new owners take over, one of the first things they do is that they erase upper brass, i.e. CEO, sporting director, finance manager, blah, blah. They bring in their own people. And then they take it to the next level by appointing their own manager. Some ownerships will like to say, you know what, let me wait a while and see if this guy can buy into our ideas. But typically when billionaires are coming in with their money, they have a good idea of who they want to put in charge of their project. And so I, for one, I was sort of surprised that when they brought in Barada, they brought in Ashworth, they still sort of allowed Ten Hag to continue.
I think it was a consequence of the fact that the people they wanted did not come into the job. If you ask me, I think Thomas Tuchel was top of the Ineos list. But the fact that they couldn't agree on numbers and finance and salary and all those things, what else could they have done? So Thomas Tuchel moves on, he now gets the England job. I always say that whatever extension Ten Hag got, it was not a new deal. They just triggered that option in his contract that says, okay, you get an additional. It was simply because they couldn't find anybody. And then they said, okay, let us see how all of this plays out. And I think the people at Ineos have seen enough to make a call and say that this team may not make the progress they would like under Erik ten Hag. And it's not a slight on Erik ten Hag's ability, but if you ask me, I think just like I accused Jose Mourinho of doing, he built up his own house and tore it down with his own strange, funny decisions. And the decisions
I was about to come to that.
The decisions have become bizarre and more bizarre as the seasons and weeks have gone past. Right? And I'll give you a very simple example, like Ahmad. Last week, Thursday, United needed something off the bench, and Ten Hag's first card was Anthony. Clearly, that was an experiment.
He says that Anthony has been decent in training. But
clearly, when we all watch Ahmad, you can tell that Ahmad is a player who has a lot more to offer than Anthony. So why don't you make the basic decisions? Bring a player in, let him deliver, because when he delivers, he saves your job. And the insistence on Anthony and all of that, I just think that, like I said, Ten Hag made horrible mistakes. And the numbers, the data, the eye test, the performance, you could tell that nothing was going in his favor. I'll make the point about the weekend's game. You know, you can look at the weekend's game and say, players didn't put away chances. But have we ever looked deeply and talked about maybe confidence? Where's the confidence of the player? Because scoring is a function of confidence. Right? A function of two things: coaching, confidence, and then the confidence is powered, or your ability is there. What powers this is your confidence to believe that if I'm in this position, I'm scoring this 9 times out of 10 with my eyes closed. But why are players missing chances? I think at the base of this is confidence. That players don't feel empowered. The confidence is on the floor. When you watch players play, we talk about a lack of, fight and all of that. There are times when players give up. But you can tell that there are times when players just don't believe that this thing is going to work. And if I were a Man United player and I watch all of these things happening, I'd begin to ask myself that what exactly is happening. And that is highlighted by the contrast you see when the same players go and play for their countries.
Yeah.
How is it that they look different when they play for their countries, but when they play for Man United, they look completely lost?
So are you putting Erik ten Hag in the Otto bracket now? Because for me, I say Erik ten Hag's contribution to Man United's issue or problems is just 25%. And that is based on two things.
I wouldn't even come to those things, yeah.
One, the Ahmad issue. I don't get why he has a problem giving Ahmad extensive minutes and an extensive role, a prominent role in this team.
Yeah.
That's one issue I have with Ten Hag, or I had with Ten Hag at Man United. Number two, the ruthlessness to deliver ruthless decision in games, not during training sessions or before games, in games. So we showed one highlight of the Man United loss to Tottenham Hotspur. That first goal that Man United conceded. Rashford lost the ball and he gave up on the play. He didn't track back. Garnacho did same. And the guy he lost the ball to, Mickey van de Ven, carried the ball about 50 yards.
The full length of the pitch, really.
Almost full length of the pitch. And he ended up squaring the ball for Brennan Johnson to score. As soon as that goal went in, that was in the 3rd minute. 3rd minute of the game, Erik ten Hag should have just got off his bench, instructed Amad Diallo and Rasmus Højlund, go and warm up for the next 10 minutes, intense warm up, come back to the bench, and I'll sub you on. Rashford and Garnacho, off you go. In-game ruthlessness, not after the game, then you make changes. No. In-game ruthlessness. Benny McCarthy addressed this, that Erik ten Hag is as fine a tactician as you will ever have, but sometimes he lacks that fire in the belly, and that's what players sometimes need. They need their manager to deliver that fire to them, and you don't need to shout, you don't need to talk, but by your actions,
tough decisions.
By your actions, they will get that fire. So, and you don't wait for the game to end and for training sessions to begin and end before you deliver that fire. In game. Because I've seen Jose Mourinho bring on Callum Hudson-Odoi. Was it Callum Hudson?
That was Thomas Tuchel.
Thomas Tuchel, thank you. He brought him on in the second half. After 13 minutes, he took him off. And he was asked why he did that move. And he said, yes, because I gave him instructions before he went on the field. He went on the field, he did something different. I was angry about it. And on top of that, it was affecting the team's play. So I took him off. Period. That is a ruthless manager. In game, in real time. That is what, unfortunately, Erik ten Hag lacks.
Well, I have a few theories about how all of this has gone pear-shaped for Erik ten Hag, but let's take a look at a reel of his best moments at Man United and his worst moments, because really he's been fired, and so everybody all of a sudden feels like he's the bad guy, he's not good enough. He had great times at United. At a point in his first season, he was being heavily touted for his in-game management. I mean, the ability to react when other managers make switches.
That was true. He actually did that.
He finished 3rd on the table, won the Carabao Cup. So let's get a glimpse of what Ten Hag has been up to at United. We'll talk about if the problems have gone away now, what it means to spend £205 million and then do away with the manager, and what's next for Man United, really. So after famous quotes, after confrontations with journalists, after winning 2 cups, really, the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup, Ten Hag has been fired. Like we've rightly established, he says that if United don't appreciate his talents, he's a winner. And so he will take those talents elsewhere and continue to win trophies. Well, what we know is that the career has been pretty illustrious. I think it was Go Ahead Eagles, Utrecht, Ajax, Man United. Now he served time at Bayern Munich as an assistant. Now who knows where he might head next. That would be eye-opening to see who hires Erik ten Hag as a manager next. But the news coming in also is that Ruud van Nistelrooy, his assistant brought in at the start of the season, will be brought in as the interim manager. Also, the news is that the current backroom staff will remain the same. So nothing changes as things stand now. We'll get some reaction from an ex-Man United player, turned pundit. Did some coaching himself, didn't go too well, but that's how life be sometimes. Gary Neville has been speaking. We'll talk about that in a bit. But Nathan, let me talk to you about Van Nistelrooy taking over in the interim. And tie that to spending £205 million by Lenny Yoro, Ugarte, De Ligt, all of these guys, literally importing Ten Hag's backline from Ajax for him. Is United not falling back into the same situation they're falling into with Van Gaal, Mourinho, David Moyes, where you buy a manager, his set of players? This was on the brink of becoming an all-11 Ten Hag, all-bench Ten Hag, and now he is gone. Is this not back to square one again?
It potentially could be. Potentially it could be, because these were players that Ten Hag wanted. He always kept saying that the acquisitions made were the sums of, his decisions and then Ineos's decisions, and then they came together and they agreed. He says players being Dutch or players being former acquaintances of his are just coincidences. That the players
that's interesting.
Yeah, he says the players are good enough. We wait to see. Ruud van
Is Tyrone Malacia still around?
He is. I've seen pictures of him training.
Yeah, he started training on grass.
He even has braids now.
Are you sure? Are you sure it was him?
Yeah, he started training on grass.
That's what it was him.
Yeah, he started training.
I think Ruud van Nistelrooy was in the building when some of those purchases were made, right? So he would know a thing or two about the players and their profiles and all of that. He has a job on his hands because he's supposed to steady the ship. I don't know what the plans are for him in terms of Ineos, whether or not this audition, quote unquote, will factor into their ultimate decision making, or they will get somebody from the outside to come and work with this back room. Of course, that comes with its own challenge, because if you employ a new manager, he may not like this back room, he may like a new one. And like I said, it's almost back to the same old cycle.
Exactly. So why do you sack the manager?
But if the manager is not delivering, what do you do?
He's delivered 2 titles in 2 years. Something that you hadn't won. The first title that he delivered 6 years prior, Man United didn't have a title. So you are taking baby steps and making significant baby steps.
So what's the guarantee that in his 3rd season he was going to win anything?
There's no guarantee, but at the end of the day, based on his track record, you could clearly tell that this guy was doing something very well.
But when you watch this Man United side, I don't see how they were going to thrive in any cup competition. They've played 3 Europa League games. They've not won any.
Yep.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, they had 10 games to play.
Look, for me, the most telling thing has been the lack of goal scoring. You see, Ben, and the lack of change in the form of the strikers. I feel like United also have, the hierarchy generally would have doubted Erik ten Hag's credibility in terms of talent IDs, i.e.
It's not only even talent ID, talent improvement.
Improvement, exactly. I.e. if you go tell a club to sanction $100 million signing, that is colossal money. And you see, I feel like over time, Anthony's situation has been swept under the rug, and everybody shrugged their shoulders and said, okay, maybe this is what it is, and we're going to probably see this contract out and let it play out. But that's a lot of money. Anthony's on top tier money at Man United, and for all you know, they still even have installments of that money to still probably pay. And like you rightly mentioned, Ineos have coming in now, clearly doing a forensic look at everything cash and everything financial. So they probably look at that salary, for instance, and say, wow, bro, your player is not playing. He's collecting top tier money. We paid top tier money for this guy. Tyrone Malacia these days has become a mystery. You can almost write a folk tale about Tyrone Malacia. That's a guy Erik ten Hag sanctioned. They bought him for big money. Now he's coming. You buy Manuel Ugarte. He's not playing. That's 50 million. You made a club pay for him. Mason Mount. He's not really playing. So I feel like Ten Hag has become a burden for upper brass at Man United, and maybe the financials and the general broader view of how firing a Man United manager has, like the domino effect, probably had them thinking a little too much or overthinking the decision. But I think it's something they should have done at the end of last season. I think they allowed themselves to get infatuated by that FA Cup trophy and allowed Ten Hag to talk a big game about it.
I will say, and I don't know what conversations they had. I think the biggest consideration the people at Ineos may have made in that decision was, okay, Erik ten Hag says he had injury problems. Did he have injury problems? Yes, he did have injury problems. He played how many different combinations at centre back?
More than 18.
A whole lot. So, okay, you can argue 20. And say, whatever. So, give him that. The second consideration they may have made, again, I wasn't in the room, I'm only looking at it from the outside and trying to rationalize, would be that the man says that he would work well in a new structure. No problem. So we are now putting things in place. Let us see how it goes. But this is what I think that people like Ineos may have thought. That Erik ten Hag was not... I think they may have realized that this may not work long term. We'll give him up until October, November, and quickly pull the plug. I think they should have pulled it again a few weeks ago in the international window. Maybe they should have done it at the end of last season, but they did not. They would have had enough time to do it in the last international window. You bring a manager in, he's got 10 days to work with players. And we talk about the new manager bounce, but it is very true that when the new person comes in, there's a lift and all of that. For United, I think they shouldn't get excited by the lift if or when it happens. They need to think about how to get a tune out of these players, because you cannot tell me, when you analyze the composition of the Man United squad, you cannot tell me that a manager cannot go on a 10-game winning run with these players. It's impossible. I don't think so. I think any manager who knows how to coach and can get the best out of these guys can get Man United moving up the table steadily, moving up the table well, and they can pull out results that a club with the size and reputation of Man United should get. When was the last time Man United won a big game in the league? Does anybody remember?
There was a win against Liverpool.
The last big game United won in the league was last season against Chelsea in the midst of their chaos.
They won an FA Cup final.
And even that, I'm talking about even in the league. Even that, United almost gave that game away. So for me, I talk about the fact that there are certain things you must do at this high level. And if at this high level, your team is easy to read, and I've said it so many times and I repeat it, if your team is easy to read, easy to predict, easy to plan for, and easy to play against, there is a problem with the coaching.
There's no problem with the coaching. It's down to the players, because...
How so?
Who didn't know that Phil Jackson and the Chicago Bulls will run a triangle offense?
But
who didn't know? So how come? But they prepared for it. Other teams prepared for it, right?
So how come they always won?
Because you had a talent like Michael Jordan.
No.
You had a Scottie Pippen. You had a Dennis Rodman.
You can have the talent, but I say that without the direction. And what is the direction in sport? The direction is the coaching.
But here's the deal. First year,
so are you saying that United's players have let Ten Hag down?
That's what have let him down. How is it that first year under Ten Hag, Marcus Rashford scores 30 goals in a season? Then the second season, you have him partying all over the place. How is that the manager's fault?
The manager has to take some responsibility for his players acting like...
I
know that Rashford is a grown adult.
Which other player? Okay, so Rashford doesn't perform. Did the manager get somebody else to fill in the gap? Did any player improve drastically?
Last season, Alejandro Garnacho.
And
what is happening to Garnacho this year?
He gave Kobe Mainoo his break.
Exactly.
And the manager gave Kobe Mainoo his break. Has Kobe Mainoo improved as a player?
I think he
has improved as a player.
Listen to this. When you are a manager and you give a young player an opportunity, it is good. What takes the player to the next level is your guidance. How to put him in situations where you highlight his strengths and reduce his weaknesses. And over the weekend, we had a classic case of a manager walking into his club's biggest game historically against far more illustrious opponents, even as individuals. Hansi Flick, Ben, did you imagine Barcelona winning 4-0 at the Bernabeu with Paul Kubasi and others in the team? No. How so? Because Hansi Flick would have figured out a game plan to hide the weaknesses of his players, because they have weaknesses, but highlights their strengths so much so that it can guide them through.
But if the players don't deliver, how are you going to get that game plan to work? You saw that Casado pass that led to Lewandowski's goal. You had a situation where a simple pass was supposed to be delivered by Casemiro for Man United to continue their build-up in that loss to Liverpool. And
is Casemiro an expert at giving those passes?
No. I'm saying a simple pass. He wasn't supposed to deliver a diagonal pass. He was supposed to give a simple pass to a teammate who was close by for Man United to continue their build-up. He failed to do that. And at that time, Man United had been exposed because in a typical attacking formation, the fullbacks had moved upwards, upfield. And in that situation, he lost the ball. Liverpool countered in transition, and Man United conceded a goal. How is it that, look at the average positioning of the fullback, Diogo Dalot. Don't you see him in more goal-scoring positions than ever before? That is a system. Christian Eriksen, last season in the Europa League, this is Man United is competing in the Europa League. Last season in the Europa League, Christian Eriksen played 8 games. He got 2 assists. This year, 3 games into the Europa League, he has 3 goals and 2 assists. He is ensuring that the goal scoring issue is spread across players because he does not have he does not have a top level striker yet. Rasmus Højlund is developing into that one. So in that situation, you spread the goal responsibilities across the front line. He has done it by ensuring that he creates a system that puts players in positions closer to the goal than ever before. And yet they are not scoring.
Fragile.
United. Let me just say we need to go on a break, but let me just say that. Let me just say that two things can be true. And what y'all was saying, I think Ten Hag's players have definitely let him down. Do I think he's a decent manager? Yes. Do I also think that he deserves a good chunk of this blame? Yes. Because look, like you're saying, why are you spreading around goals to different players when a club like Man United have given you money to buy a striker, and you insisted that money go buy a 19 or 20-year-old unproven forward? Fine. But he comes in and he's not scoring. That's the structure. He finds in your structure,
you're not signing players above 25.
Fair game.
That's why you didn't go for Harry Kane.
But there are more proven players. I'm not even talking about age. There are more proven players out there. Fair game. You sign the guy, he's not scoring, he gets injured, he becomes a burden to the team. Then you get another transfer window to make things right, and you go sign another guy who says that he's not a striker. That look, we've laughed about it, but I think these things are damning. Like, you sign a guy who's supposed to come and relieve your team because you finished your season with a negative goal difference. If there's anything more appalling and to be embarrassed about as a United fan, I think that stat is enough. Look, a team that has harbored Cristiano Ronaldo and Van Nistelrooy, Carlos Tevez, Dimitar Berbatov, finishing the season, Wayne Rooney, finishing the season with a negative goal difference. That is absolutely unthinkable. I think that, look, some of these decisions are what Ineos would look at and say, this guy is a complete joke, because you buy us Joshua Zexi, he's your darts man. I'm sure you really vouched for him to come in. And then he comes in and the first thing he does is give you a disclaimer that he's not about to score goals. And we see it in games. Clearly, this guy cannot score goals. Anthony, probably chilling. I'm sure Anthony's attitude probably stinks because he's not scoring, he's not playing, he's earning a lot of money, and is all over the place getting the club legal issues they don't even like. And so there's been a lot of baggage in the Ten Hag era. Look, no matter how you slice it, I think it's a shame because United, really, like United Global, vouched for Ten Hag to take the job because everybody thought that he was good enough to take the job. And truth be told, if anybody would have told you that his era would have played out like this when he was first hired, you wouldn't even believe it. But let's take a break on this big bit of breaking news. We'll come back, we'll tie the conversation together. The name Southgate is in the mix. Van Nistelrooy, like I said, is in the mix. I'm enjoying every bit of the Southgate connections. I know it's killing people out here, but we'll talk about it when we come back from the break. There's a lot to talk about. Stay with us. His final days at United, he became a bit of a philosopher, a bit of a journalist, a bit of everything, would lose games and then would get into talk about how the performance was a big improvement on what they had done in previous games. You got the sense that he knew the axe was coming, and so he was massaging the situation to see if he could get to a good spot, get a good run, and then, have a something hanging well over his head. But let's talk about the aftermath of all of this. United's fans will react. United's shareholders will react. United's ex-managers, ex-players will all react. But my question is, ever since Alex Ferguson left his job, this has become a cycle. At what point does this stop?
That's a very interesting question. I don't think we ever have any manager staying in his job for 26 years now.
Oh no, we are. But haven't you noticed a pattern? A coach or a manager gets clamored for by the Man United fan base, the board. He comes in, all pop and pageantry. A few years later, it becomes so toxic.
The only person they didn't vouch for was David Moyes.
Yes, it becomes so toxic that the same fans who advocated for the manager say turn on him,
crucify him.
Then rinse, cycle, repeat. It's the same
rinse
thing.
And repeat.
Yeah, then that's why I'm saying that this sacking, it was off, and I'm so disappointed in this sacking because I thought that Ineos will come in with their structure and change that whole system or that whole team.
What if Ten Hag
by maintaining the coach?
What if Ten Hag was not their man? But if you look at the context of the entire situation,
I think that's what it was.
Then why did you keep him beyond the off-season?
And that's what I'm saying. That I think
that was a funny decision.
Yes, I think they were left with no. I think they were left with no choice.
I think Ruben Amorim was.
I'm about to.
I don't think they had a conversation.
Let's go into that.
I don't think they had a conversation with Amorim because it probably would have been very complicated trying to prize him away from Sporting Lisbon. And I stand by my point. I think Thomas Tuchel was at the top of the Ineos list.
But now he's gone.
But they couldn't agree on the salary, so he's gone. And I think once they couldn't get any other person, what really could they have done?
And now you're about to pay compensation to Ten Hag, and after that have to pay money to bring in a new coach.
Well, that's how it plays out.
Let's land on that point. Do you keep Van Nistelrooy for the rest of the season, or how long do you play the interim card?
If I were Ineos, I would allow this to run for a few months just to see if things would pick up. Now, if things pick up on the performance side,
we've seen this before.
It may or may not. Hold on.
That's why I have a smack on my face. We've seen this before.
But you see, it happens everywhere.
No, either which ways, a decision must be made.
It happens everywhere. Look, when Chelsea got rid of, was it Potter?
Yeah.
And they brought in Thomas Tuchel. Took one training session, and we all saw it different. Remember, and Thomas Tuchel said he thought of the new Chelsea game plan on his flight from Paris to London.
Yeah,
he implemented it. It led them into the Champions League. Okay, whatever. The house crumbled later. The point I'm making is that this is where United have boxed themselves. There's nothing they can do now. So what they need to do is relax, take it easy. Obviously, there may be a lift, and may in capitals, there may be a lift. The next league game, maybe the one after that, there may be a lift. Players may perform. We saw the only time. It was wonderful. So there may be a lift. What United and Ineos must do is pick a coach whose principles align with what it is they want to do. Now, a lot of that decision making, and United have now almost have gone back to making the tough decisions. Does it mean a surgical a surgical operation on this squad? Yes or no? Nobody knows where it will go. But United, for them to end this cycle, and it's almost as though they are going back to the cycle. But if they want to quickly end the cycle and put themselves on a platform of stability, it may mean one of two things. You are either getting rid of more players and bringing in players who align to the principles you want and the principles of the coach you bring in. So a coach has his principles, aligns with that of Ineos. He brings in players who can deliver on those principles, and the rest is history. Or you can decide to play it by ear and then change managers every year and a half to 2 to 3 years, whatever it is. But the point is, United had to make a decision sooner or later. Because if you ask me,
it had to be later. And not sooner, because
later,
maybe at the end of the season.
When United finished like 15th,
no problem. Because and you said it.
What's the guarantee
on the team? Harry Maguire is in his final year of his contract. Johnny Evans is definitely going to go at the end of this season because he's on a 1-year rental. Luke Shaw pretty much bound for the exit door too. So you had 3 players right there in the back line. So you get a chance to bring in more players to complement the back line that you fortified pretty much this off-season and the last off-season with Lisandro Martinez and Matthias de Ligt Lenny Euro also coming in. Then that's where you get the stability to really give this manager the chance to build on something and not fall back into that chaotic cycle that we've seen Man United fall into several times. Because at the end of the day, look, trust me, I've seen this scene and this play out before.
We've seen this movie
Van Nistelrooy
before.
will come in, he will get the wins. Then they will guarantee him the rest of the year, his contract for the rest of the year, and possibly add another year.
Yeah.
Then he will become another Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Because at the end of the day, you fall back into this whole trap where, yes, he comes in, he performs early, then suddenly after the second season, he becomes so toxic. Then we have to bring in a new manager. At the end of the year, at the end of the season, just a quick one. At the end of the day, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, isn't he a Man United legend? He is. Just like Van Nistelrooy?
Yes.
Is he not the former Man United player just like Van Nistelrooy?
Yeah.
Don't players love Ruud van Nistelrooy just like the way they love Ole Gunnar Solskjaer? Exactly. Is he not coming in at a point in time where players look to have soured under a manager and their performances didn't have that uptick? Just like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
What if this was Ineos's plan? What if this was Ineos's plan all along?
That's what I'm saying. It's possible.
Van Nistelrooy.
It was Erik ten Hag that brought
Van Nistelrooy. Ten Hag recommended Van Nistelrooy.
So what if Ineos says, you know, okay, we bring him in. Let's see how it goes. If it doesn't work, we put Van Nistelrooy there, anoint him. You know.
You see, that's the problem, and that's another thing else.
Van Nistelrooy won 2 trophies.
Yeah.
The Dutch Cup and the Dutch Super Cup.
Yeah.
But at the end of the second season, it was so toxic that the players even wanted him gone.
Yeah, that's true.
So again, we are falling back into that whole cycle.
Okay, so
that's what I'm about to say.
United don't appoint.
That's what I'm about to say, because now we need to talk about, okay, look beyond the interim. Yeah. Let's look at substantive options. And I say that that's where the bigger headache comes in, because now the coaching industry is made up of not so many accomplished head coaches. A lot of the accomplished guys are either retiring, taking up pre-retirement jobs, and that kind of stuff. So a lot of the guys who have like trophies in their cupboard to show you years of man management experience are not really there. So who is United going to turn to? And realistically, I've spoken about Southgate, like we've tried to like brush it aside. How realistic is that? Because look, United, you can say anything you want, but they are as English an institution as it gets.
Okay, so how realistic is the Southgate appointment? If I put away my own opinions of guys, I think that appointment is doable because it's a very convenient appointment for Ineos. They and Southgate seem to have a cool relationship. Southgate is jobless as we speak. He may look at Man United and say, okay, this may work. I mean, it's great. He gets to coach consistently every week. He has to solve problems and all of that. The reason why I may not, or I think Ineos may not give Southgate the job is that they will look at international football and say, this is very different from club football. And Southgate's club career is not the most glorious in terms of managing. So that will be the biggest stake that may be used against Southgate. The third point is that will he even be interested after doing 8 years of this England job, where even as national team manager, where you are meeting every 3, 4, 5 months, the scrutiny and things you get.
It was intense.
Imagine you are Manchester United manager. Even though you are English, you will get a lot of the press liking you, but they will also start to turn against you when the results don't work. And that kind of intensity, I wonder if Southgate is built for it. So that is what I would say. And talking about the general climate of coaching, then I don't think people these days have the trophy hall of Jose Mourinho, Alex Ferguson, or Arsene Wenger anymore. Now it's about who has the fanciest tactics, who can get a team to deliver maybe 1 league title, 2 league titles, because the game has changed. No manager gets to stay in the job for 10, 11, even 26 years. It's gone. As Mikel Arteta has stayed in his job for a while, right? But even
Liverpool kept Klopp for a while,
for 9 years.
But even
Arteta is pushing 8.
You know, but even Arteta, when the results start going really bad, the people at the top will have to make a decision. So no job is guaranteed. You stay in it because you give them a reason to stay in. Klopp stayed in because you could tell concretely what he was doing, brick by brick. He rebuilt Liverpool. And he got them to a point where when he was leaving, he won one of everything that had to be won. People make an argument about the numbers Klopp had. I talk about the fact that at least he could win one of each thing that was available. And he did win that.
I mean, if you finish a league with over 90 points and don't win the league, you know you are doing something elite, but there's probably just another level you can't simply reach. But
that's what I would say. Look, for Man United to compete, and you see, we say a lot about structure, long-term, blah, blah, blah. Listen, football games or football teams are designed to do one thing and one thing only: string football wins together. Win a series of games, whether it's in the league or in the cup. String the wins, then the points will come, then the titles will come, then the trophies will come. I think that's what United needs to think about.
Where do teams make
draw the line?
Good. Where do you draw the line? Because what I'm about to say is the truth. Look, teams will go through bad spells. You can go through a 10-game patch where you probably win 1 or 2, draw a couple, and lose the rest.
Yes.
So at what point do you say this environment is toxic, this guy needs to go, or this guy is not up to it? Now, I'm saying this because, hold on, I'm making an example case in point. Thomas Tuchel wins the Champions League for Chelsea in a terrible campaign. Then all of a sudden, after the Champions League, team is laboring to create chances. Players are not really feeling him that much anymore. The wins are not coming. The football is ugly. The guy that everybody said was great all of a sudden is not so good because there's a bad patch. Do you say we wait it out until the rainy days come again, or you say this guy's not good enough, he needs to go? How do you marry that? Because there's a lot going on.
For me, it's all about what I see. What I see, and what I see, what I saw with Man United under Erik ten Hag was that there was a clear, distinct plan to play the right way. To play the right way. It was just that the players failed to execute their roles. The players failed to execute their roles. And with that, there's only so much the coach can do. The coach can get you to sit, watch film. He can talk to you, give you that pep talk.
No,
he can embrace you.
I agree.
He can do
everything. Look at Jadon Sancho. Gave him sandwiches, took him to picnics.
He gave him a sabbatical for crying out loud and recommended Dutch managers.
Only God knows the components and the details of that sabbatical.
And recommended Dutch managers he trusted would be able to do a good job, a fine job on Jadon Sancho to build his confidence. And it still didn't work because the player did not apply himself.
He has hardened his heart.
There is nothing that the coach can do. So based on what I see,
I mean, we are seeing a bit of that at Chelsea, aren't we?
You see, just yesterday's game, just watch that game. What more do you want the manager to do? Yeah. It is clearly a case of executing your role. You could not execute your role, and because unfortunately players are so empowered these days, they give off this stinking attitude that I don't want to do it because I have some kind of a rift with the manager, and the next thing you know, the owners start shaking in their boots, quaking in their boots. Then because the manager is the easiest one to get rid of, they get rid of the manager. They bring in another manager. Oh, the players are so happy. They go on a brilliant run. That manager gets all the backing in the world. Then the cycle repeats itself. It gets toxic, the manager has to go. When at all will Man United get to the point where they will empower the manager to the point that the players can't overrule the manager's performance?
I think teams need to go to, look, you need to define your objective as a team. Are you a short-term team? Are you a mid-term team? Are you a long-term team? If you think that you are a short-term team, i.e. a Man United, I want to get back to glory days, Champions Leagues and Premier League titles, you need to give a manager minimum 3 years to do his job. And I think that United have done well in that regard. They've given Ten Hag 2.5 years. Yeah. This would have been 3 years. Probably they should have waited to the third year, probably not. But I feel like teams need to properly define, because you can't look at what Chelsea have gone through in the last 2 years. Tuchel, Lampard, back Potter, to Lampard again. It's just crazy. Poch, now you've gone to Maresca. Hopefully Maresca can have some stability, because you can clearly see that he has a plan. But teams have become very knee-jerk, and I don't think that's right. I feel like as a team you should invest hiring somebody and paying them £4 or £5 million is not some investment to be toyed with after 5 or 6 months. It's not an investment to be toyed after a year.
I get you, but you see, football is a results business.
It is.
Y'all spoke about the performance, what you see, right? And all of us watch Man United all the time. And I always say that when you watch the team, you can tell that there's something wrong with the team.
What is wrong with the team?
Nathan, let me just ask the two of you.
Yeah, let me ask you, why is it? And how is it that when United play, their fans are never comfortable because they know that some crazy thing is about to happen. Because United went to Porto.
Yeah.
They led 2-0.
And some of our fans were still on point.
At no point did Porto look like they were coming back into the game. Porto found a little loophole on their right-hand side, which was Man United's left. And in the space of 10-15 minutes, they found 3 goals to score using the same simple methods. My basic knowledge of football tells me.
Who plays on the left side? Marcus Rashford. Is he not one of the worst performing players in the
The manager picks him.
Relax. So if you are the manager, you build your team. You see, and this
his replacement is Alejandro Garnacho, by the way, another worst performing player.
This is why I fault Erik ten Hag. Is he saying that he cannot see? Then we are not, as a manager, you don't have to come and tell the whole world what your team's problems are. But every manager knows what his team is good at, what they are not good at. Ange Postecoglou knows that his team plays in only one direction. So the day the High Line decides to kill them, he knows it is their weakness. Why do you think he signed Mickey van de Ven? He knows that that is one way of beating the deficit, so that when there's a ball over the top, a player can quickly retreat, make up the deficit and all of that. When you look at Man United play, the weaknesses are so glaring.
But again, right, we're wrapping up the conversation, by the way. How much responsibility falls on these players? How much responsibility falls on the Glazers and Ineos? Because don't forget, like it's almost like they've flown under the radar. They are still big players in this team. Ineos are only part owners of this team.
But they are responsible for football.
That is why they are the ones making this call. Exactly. So players, you see, in all of this, when I criticize Erik ten Hag, I don't do it to say that players are never guilty. Players are equally guilty, but you see, when I have to share the weights, I will not fault players for structural problems. I will fault players when they are sleeping on the job.
Which they have been.
They have been.
If you get 6 goal scoring chances in the first half and you can't score, you are sleeping on your job.
But in the second half, did United get better? United got worse in the second half because all of a sudden West Ham made 3 changes. The three players they brought on were 3 players who directly contributed to the goals. That's where I kind of fault Erik ten Hag. So your team pounds an opponent in the first half, you don't score. So how do you drop the ball in the second and revert to mean and say that you've gone back to a bad side? So I think Erik ten Hag will have to reflect on his Man United career. He may not tell us, but he has to look at his time at United and say that, you know what, I mismanaged good chunks of this time. And I'll go back to the point I made at the start of this conversation. United's decline started right after they won the League Cup. And I think Ten Hag should have arrested that decline. He should have figured out what was wrong. Should have handled the team better. Tactically, he could have and should have made better decisions. Player choice, substitutions, reading the game. Ben, do you know how indicting it is when a news portal goes to interview 19 other coaches and video analysts in the same league you compete in, and they ask them all the same question? How do you prepare for a game against Man United? And all of them say practically the same thing. That, when we play against United, we know that after 20 minutes, a certain hole will appear in midfield, and that is where we all enjoy ourselves. And when you say we cannot blame Erik ten Hag, your team plays and everybody knows that after 20 minutes, a hole will appear in midfield, a hole you can't plug. And opponents show up at Old Trafford and they dance all around, enjoy themselves, to the point where a Fulham player was interviewed, and I suspect it's Andreas Pereira. He kept saying we couldn't believe what we were watching, that we had so much space at Old Trafford and we were enjoying ourselves.
Yeah, I was shaking his head, but you see, in the end, Ten Hag picks the personnel.
And that's why I'm saying that it had to be a progressive approach, because back in the day, you have Christian Eriksen, you have Casemiro, you have Scott McTominay. Don't they sleep on the job? Are they the fastest to recover when they sleep on the job? No, they are not.
In Ten Hag's first season, what he did, he played some of the games, or most of the games at home. He played sometimes on the break. That shielded his teams from problems. You can argue and say it was one-dimensional. I agree it was one-dimensional. I agree he needed to find other ways. But in finding another way to play, you don't also do it to the detriment of your team.
And that's why I say that you shouldn't have sacked him, because in the first year...
You tell your front 4, press, Ben. So Ten Hag tells his front 4, press. Tells the midfield to join the front 4 to press. And he creates this big hole in midfield, and everybody is feasting in that.
I'm going to sum up my top 5 reasons why I think United fired Ten Hag. 1, causing financial loss to the team.
With the Anthony deal.
That's the first one. Not even just the Anthony deal. Like I mentioned, Anthony is a prime example. The young chap they bought, Malacia, is a prime example. Sofian Amrabat, I think, was a big disappointment, and he was sanctioned by Ten Hag. Ten Hag vouched for Sofian Amrabat to come to Manchester United. He was a big disappointment. Jadon Sancho's situation, I think, was also another toxic phase in that whole episode. I'm not sure the team were proud of how that whole situation played out. So and then you go ahead and purchase £208 million worth of players this season, and you are all over the place. Andre Onana is in the mix. Import your backline from Ajax. So financial loss to the state is one. A lack of improvement of players, I think, is a good marker of how you judge a progressive manager. Look, sometimes I always say this, that football has become trophy obsessed, and that is great because football is about winning. But there are managers who are really good at their jobs. Just because they have not won trophies does not mean that they are not good at their jobs. Look, United failed, or Ten Hag failed to improve literally anybody at United. He gave Kobe Mainoo his break. I will credit him for that. I think Mainoo played well under Ten Hag, and Ten Hag has every right to go and say anywhere that it's because of him that Mainoo turned out this way. But that is not enough. That is one needle in the
But even
haystack.
that with Mainoo, I still think
he's not managed the situation
yes, I think
properly.
He could have coached him to another level.
Another example.
Half a step.
I think he's not been given. I think Mainoo just broke out recently, and so the trajectory, he's not had enough time to work with him. I can say that. Garnacho is another. You can tell the talent is clearly there, but the talent is still lacking direction. And then when I go to the rest of the guys have just gotten worse under his watch.
Bruno Fernandes.
Mason Mount is still trying to find probably his locker at Man United. He's all over the place and
Bruno
confused.
Is
so
a mess.
that is another. So not improving players, another. And then thirdly, goal scoring. Look, Dutch managers, attacking football, champagne football. That is the hallmark of a Dutch manager. You come in and your team doesn't seem to have an identity. 2.5 years into Ten Hag's tenure, if you ask a United fan what Erik Ten Hag's identity is, he will not be able to tell you. And it's so bad that opponent managers were making fun of you. They asked Ange Postecoglou about the Ten Hag situation and about how he said he needed certain players to unlock certain players and certain players to come in. And he said, just play football, mate. Just do it. Like, I just came in and I did it. You can't do it. You don't have an identity after 2.5 years. That's just unfortunate. You cannot score goals as a Dutch manager who spent over 100 million on forwards. I mean, these are indictments. Fourth thing for me is that he failed to really connect with the fans. Look, there's a thing or two you can learn from Jurgen Klopp as a manager. Sometimes, I think Klopp is a brilliant tactical brain. Sometimes he lets the tactics take a backseat and lets emotions run
I think
the
that's
ship.
what Benny McCarthy said.
Yeah. Look, Ten Hag has never ever been able to properly connect with United's fan base. Even when he was really winning, this guy has this strict headmaster feel about him. I will lash you with a cane. You can't cross my path. Look, you can't run a football team ever like that. Nobody's saying you need to be friends with your players, but you need to establish a relationship where your players are not afraid to come to you with things and also still respect your authority. I don't think he ever struck that balance with them. And the fan base as well. When you lose games, your fans want you to be sincere with them. Okay, we didn't play well, we didn't do A, B, and C without throwing anybody under the bus. Like I said, he would lose games and get into philosopher mode, like saying all kinds of funny things, word salads. Like, you don't do that. And you see, the modern football fan is intelligent. The modern football fan consumes more stats and figures now than they probably ever done in their life. So you cannot, pardon my language, BS people with things you say when they know what they are seeing on the pitch. And finally, I feel like the Ten Hag era has come to an end. One, because he failed himself to build on the good things that he did. Like you said, he was really great for me at managing games. And
his first season,
things happen quickly, he will react. Something happens quickly, he will react. And I liked his early disciplinary style, nipping things in the bud until he started taking his players to the media. So for me, look, I am disappointed. I genuinely wanted him to probably succeed. I don't want United to win the league, but I wanted Ten Hag to succeed, because when United play well and Liverpool play United, it's a good game. When they play Manchester City, it's a good game. But it's all kind of dead. Like you said, big games coming, you know United is going to either draw or lose the game. And so it's just unacceptable. Like, this is a team that is accustomed to winning titles, now fighting Europa League, Conference League battles, and like vying for top 4. Like, the standards have gone to the dogs. And so United are fired Ten Hag. We'll see who they hire next. I hope Southgate gets the job. He's my man.
I wants to say something.
30 seconds. Let's wrap it up. 30 seconds.
I'm just disappointed in all, because one, like you said, first year he came in, he played more or less like on the back foot, counter-attacking football.
Yeah.
So they got success. But he moved over to second year into his identity.
Yes.
That's to play expansive. So why don't you give him the chance to be able to complete the cycle by completing his third year? And that's why, for me, this sacking is very disappointing. On top of that, first year he comes in, he's a bit reactive. He reacts within games based on things that are happening. But at what point would you make that step up to become a proactive coach? He did it in his second season by playing a little bit more expansive, all-attacking football. But it did not happen, because he did not have the right materials. Now he's building the materials in place. And in the middle of the process, he sacked him.
Not have the right.
Nathan, your final words on this.
Okay, so I will say that it's quite disappointing that the story had to end like this. But I think Erik ten Hag brought it largely upon himself, and it was coming. You knew the clock was ticking. It was just a matter of when that decision would be made. Ineos have got big calls to make now. When you inherit a club the size of Man United, you have got big decisions to make. I'm sure they would have wanted an easier start to the reign. You handle things, you take time to build up to the big decisions. They have one on their hands. What they must guard against is sending United back to the days of where the loop keeps happening. They need to make a very important decision. Make it now. But in all of this, I also think they need to have a frank conversation with the playing body. Get everybody on one side and ensure that everybody's rowing in the same direction. But I hope they do. Whatever happens,
Sir Radcliffe needs to start walking into the dressing room. He needs to start walking into the dressing room. So thank you very much, Nathan. Thank you very much, y'all. I'm going to go check out the money markets and see how United stocks are doing following this particular decision. I'm keeping an eye on anything Southgate that comes out as well. I'll update all of you guys as and when the news comes through. It's been absolutely amazing coming your way with this bit of breaking news from Manchester. My name is Benjamin Nketiah. Same time, another time. We'll see you on ChannelOne TV.